The Nissan GT-R is a name that is as important to car enthusiasts as Spielberg or Tarantino is to cinephiles. This 2021 Premium model is the latest evolution of the R35 that debuted in 2007. For reference, that's the year the first iPhone came out. There's been few changes for 2021. The 3.8-liter twin-turbo V6 makes 565 horsepower, the same number as last year. But it has new turbos that Nissan says are more efficient and responsive. A titanium exhaust now comes standard, and there's some new exhaust manifold mounts that are easier to service or tune. But are any of those changes enough to keep an aging icon in the spotlight?
It might be old, but it's still real fast. That's how horsepower works. Speaking of which, so 3.8-liter twin turbo makes 565 horsepower at 6,500 RPMs and makes peak torque from 3,300 to 55, which is 467 pound-feet of torque. Got a big, meaty power band. You know, once the turbos kick, whoa! Oh man, let's do that again. Slow down a little bit. I'm gonna go down to 2. And I'm gonna do this, and boost. Whoa! Yeah, all you hear is air rushing there out the rear diffuser, and you know the V6 engine just going for it up front. Man, when that torque hits at that 3,500 range, then it really sits back and starts going. Before that, of course, it's a little bit light. You know, this is not a V8. It's not a hot V. It takes longer for it to spool compared to a lot of modern power plants. It just does. But man, once it gets going, woo! Let's do it again. Let's do it again. In the corners, obviously, it's quite good. It says GT-R on the back. That's what they do. The wheels are 20 by 9.5 up front, 20 by 10.5 in the back. Thank you, Nissan, for keeping 20-inch wheels and maintaining some sidewall in this world of 22s and 23s. I mean, it doesn't mean it rides like a Rolls Royce. When I hit cracks in the road, I still feel them through this very rigid chassis, but they look great. Man, if this thing had 23s, I can't imagine how stiff and uncomfortable the ride would be. 6-speed dual clutch feels old, gotta be honest with you. When you're on it and you're shifting, it shifts very quick. The time it feels old though is when you put it in automatic mode and you drive around town. It upshifts to 6th so quickly. I was going 33 miles an hour and it was already in 6th gear, driving very, very lightly. Now I understand cars do that to try to get higher MPGs, but what is different about this versus PDK or even the clever ZF8 speeds out there nowadays is that when I was slowing down, it wasn't downshifting with me. It was waiting till I was going so very slowly before it would kick down to even 4th, let alone 2nd. And when I was trying to accelerate through traffic, just with that gentle push of the foot, where I know a 911 would kick down a few gears and help me move up in the lane as efficiently as possible, this was happy to just stay in 6th gear and kind of slowed me down a little bit. Don't really like that. And at those low speeds, it's a little clunky. They've refined it a lot. The early GTRs were like audibly clunky when you would shift and at low speeds. They've muted it a bit. It is still there, but it's just slow to respond. It's slow to downshift. It's slow to upshift. And when you downshift, it lunges forward a little bit. It over revs by a couple hundred RPMs, sort of like Ferraris do actually. PDK, McLaren, they land right on the RPM that they need to be on when you downshift. If you go from 4th to 3rd and it needs to land at 3526 RPM. It lands at 3526. This 37, 38, so you get a little bit of that zoom. Now, obviously, the things these cars are known for is cornering ability and the ease of speed. Those two things. And this has both of it. This has both of those. Suspension is double wishbones in the front and a multi-link in the rear. That helps keep the wheels planted over bumps, uneven terrain, etc., etc. Steering is still hydraulic. That's a good thing about having an old car, is it hasn't switched to a electronic assist. So I think you get a lot of steering feel through this car. Feels a little heavier than you might be used to with something more modern. That's because there's less assistance. But it talks to you. It really talks to you. Oof. Brakes, 6-piston Brembos in the front, 4 pistons in the rear. Car weighs 4,000 pounds, which was heavy when it came out, although nowadays everything seems to weigh that much other than McLarens and Corvettes. The car hides the weight well, though. I mean, that's what they've always done. That's what Porsche 911 turbos do well. These brakes are good. I like the pedal feel. It's not super stiff right up top. I'm just not a fan of that trait in cars. I like that the pressure builds progressively as I go through the travel of the pedal. Steering ratio, I think it's 2.4 turns lock to lock. It's pretty quick. Man, and then you just pour speed on. It's like a draft beer or a fountain drink. It just, and then it's just going. The hood looks huge, but I actually have tons of front visibility, and then the side windows as well. Jeez, it's okay. Yeah, it's easy to drive quickly. It's an all-wheel drive twin turbo car with the power of 10 top Google employees, the brains of those people running the yaw sensors and speed sensors and traction control and everything. Under normal driving, it's sending 100% of the torque to the rear, but it can do a 50-50 split if necessary. And what it's doing is it's looking at the speed I'm going, the angle of the input in the steering wheel, and then matching that against the yaw rate of the car. Basically, if I've turned the wheel a lot and the car has not turned a lot, it will direct torque and braking where it needs to go to get me around that corner. Brilliant stuff. I know a lot of cars do that, but man, I mean, we know that the GT-R was pretty early to that game back in the 90s, and that's why they destroyed everyone on the racetrack. Now I'm in manual mode, and when I downshift, it's matching them much better. I'm not even in race mode or anything. I'm still in comfort. So there's something about this transmission. It's almost like it gets irritated when you drive slowly or medium. It lunged a little bit there. But the upshifts, pretty instant. Not quite as fast as a PDK or maybe the McLaren, but as quick as you need them to be. It's fairly comfortable. The seats are nicely padded. They do hold you in really well. They refined the seats a little bit for this generation. They got rid of some hot spots and moved some wiring around. But the bolsters are interesting. They are narrower in the middle of the seat than most cars. Most cars have been in the bucket you sit in and the bolster comes around you. These seem to hold me kind of right around the spine, which works well, but I haven't gotten really comfortable in them. I kind of feel like I sat down on the seat and there's already a person sitting on the seat. Like I can't sink into it. More like I'm sitting on top of somebody else and then they're holding me tightly. And the ride is just okay. This has adaptive shocks, and I do have a button here which I can put into comfort mode. But it's still not that comfortable. It's a very stiff structure, I understand. It is a performance vehicle first and a comfortable vehicle second. But in an age with mag ride, bumpy road mode in Ferraris, etc., I don't feel as much of a difference when I put it into comfort mode with this as I do with some other cars. Inside, you are greeted with a familiar cabin, very utilitarian, I would say. Clear gauges with a carbon background, pretty cool. All the controls are canted towards the driver. Yeah, there's some part sharing with other Nissans. That's something you're gonna get when you buy a performance car from a brand that makes economy cars. That's how cars get made. They have to amortize the cost of some things across a lot of cars. And if you're Mercedes or Porsche, you don't make a $22,000 car. If you're Nissan, you do. So some of the things in here are gonna look familiar. The window switches, yeah, I've seen them for a long time in cheaper cars. I actually don't mind, because this car delivers so much performance for the money that's just something you're gonna have to deal with. If you want nicer buttons, spend more money. And the things feel nice. The HVAC controls are kind of firm when you twist them. The volume knobs are nice to use. They don't spin too easily, which we interpret as a sign of cheapness. I think everything in here looks pretty good and will look good in 10 years and 20 years, etc. Same as the R34. The interior in that car is not gorgeous. It is not a museum. It's not going to be an architectural magazine. It's just what they had at the time. And this is what they have right now, and I think they do a good job given what they have, with a few exceptions. One, this armrest. Why isn't it here further up? I know if it slid forward, it would hit this e-brake, but they need something, because this one is perfectly comfortable, and this is way back here. I have to rest my arm on the coffee. Cup holders are huge and don't have any of those little spring arms in them, so unless you put a large water bottle or large cup in that cup holder, it will move around. A normal water bottle that I put in there was bouncing all over the place. It comes with Apple CarPlay now, but you cannot get Android Auto, so anyone out there using an Android phone will be irritated by that. The screen is very clear and bright and looks pretty crispy when you're using Apple CarPlay, but when you go back to the normal screen, the default Nissan screen, the graphics look old. That tells you, oh, that's right, this car was designed 14 years ago, as were the fonts, as were the graphics. Visibility is good. It has 4 seats, kind of. And they've done a lot of work with noise canceling software to make this ride quieter. So there are microphones analyzing the sound from the engine and from the tires, pumping in like a cancellation sound through the speakers, and it makes it a little bit quieter. And I have found on the highway that it is a pretty quiet car. You can have a fairly soft conversation in here if you wanted to. So the GT-R is a weird thing. Yes, it's been around a long time. When it came out, it was a budget 911 turbo. It was under $100,000, and it was chasing very expensive cars down the track and beating some of them. The price has gone up about 14 grand for the base car in the last 14 years. Some of that is just due to them wanting to make money. Some of it's due to the cost of materials, inflation, etc., etc. So this car, as it sits now, is $112,000. The only option is the paint. Some people are saying that's a lot of money. I disagree. The Nismo is a lot of money. The Nismo is $180,000. And if you are spending that much money and you want a twin-turbo 6-cylinder all-wheel drive car, you should buy a Porsche Turbo. Because the Nismo makes 600 horsepower. It has a lot of handling upgrades from this car. But to me, the overall experience is just not going to match your $180,000 asking price. However, this car's $112,000, and that kind of puts it in a no man's land, honestly, because any Porsche at that price is going to be named Cayman or Boxster, and it's going to be 150 horsepower down from this car, not have all-wheel drive, won't have a back seat. Anything from AMG, the AMG GTs, the GTCs, those cost $140,000. Same with the R8. Ferrari, Lamborghini, not even in the discussion. On But on the other side, you have cars like the M2 CS or the M3 Comp, which are nudging $100,000. So they're a little bit less than this car, but they don't have all-wheel drive currently. So this does still sit in an interesting spot, and I still think it is a budget performance car, because what you're getting is 911 turbo-ish capability. Granted, this is older, feels older, and speed and power, you know, for the price of a really optioned up M4, you know, competition. Just a little bit above that. So the GT-R kind of stands alone. What's interesting now is you can get this much power for that money. You know, you can get a GT500, which makes way more horsepower than this and makes better sounds, and it's gonna save you $40,000. But if what you're looking for is a do-everything high-performance automobile, something like a Porsche Turbo, I know I keep saying it, but you know, it's a very high benchmark. This kind of is a good bargain. And they are stout. There's a guy here who's the engineer for Rally Ready. His name's Mike. He is here with his Time Attack GT-R, and it's making 1,200 horsepower. He has rods and pistons in it, and bigger turbos, of course, but the axles have been fine since he bought the car years ago. He's been tracking it and time attacking it for years. And for 3 years, he was making 850 horsepower, stock internals, stock everything, and he just drove it. And he drives it every day. He drove it up here from Texas. He drives it a lot. So these cars are robust. Part of the reason they got so popular in every generation, including this one, is that they are high performers that you can modify, and they're very stout. These are popular with drag racing, runway racing, etc. So they're pretty special. They're still pretty special. You know, it is old, and if you pull up next to a 2008, I think only the nerdiest will be able to tell the difference. But if you want this level of performance with a warranty, it's kind of in a market of one. It is. What I would like to see, I would love to see this battle the new M3 when the M3 gets all-wheel drive. That's going to be a competition I want to see, and we should all want to see, because now that cars like that are creeping over $100,000, things are going to get interesting for the GT-R. And it's probably time for a bit of a refresh. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for supporting us all these years, watching the podcast and the show and everything. Like, subscribe, all that crap, and we will see you later. I'm going to go to Grid Life to ride with a bunch of crazy people that are drifting their cars at 100 miles an hour.
And remember, always fight your tickets. Use code TST10 on the Off the Record app available in the Android and iOS store, or go to offtherecord.com/TST.